When you decided you wanted to take your own life,
Yeah.
what did that look like?
Yeah, I've had it since I was very young. It's something that I have consistently battled with. And actually, this is the first time I'm speaking quite openly in this way. It's very hard to explain to people what the journey is like, and the pain and the suffering. I sat there and I broke down. And I cried because I was so worried that I was going to die.
I'm so excited for this podcast. I haven't been more excited for a podcast in a long, long time.
Me too. I'm very excited, but also slightly nervous because I haven't done this at all. I've done it in
This is going to be a treat then for the listeners.
Yeah, a little bit.
You're inaccessible in the podcast world.
No, so as I went to the toilet earlier, I was like, okay, what do I share? How much do I share? Purely because sharing comes with consequences for me. Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't have that kind of consequences. So I'm always sharing freely, but we both know this podcast usually goes deep, and this is for other people to see and hear. So I'm like, how much do I share and who's going to listen and what are the consequences? Because I have to pay hefty consequences in the past, which is beautiful. It's led me to become the person that I am today. But also in the past, I shared knowing that I was going to pay for the consequences. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm just going to share. And then we decide later.
Absolutely. I think it's important to speak to that because it's also drawing people's attention to everything you hear on a podcast isn't everything. It's not everything about someone. There are also other things. Yeah, you could apply that to social media in general. It's always important to check in. But this isn't me.
Yeah.
Like people think they listen to a podcast and they know me, just like I do when I listen to Aubrey Marcus. I've been listening to him for 6 years. I know him. I don't. I know him as a podcaster. People know me as a podcaster. I'm very different when I'm on this medium. It's different. I speak my best self. You know, I try as much as possible to be authentic, but there is an element there. There's a subtlety that I try and rise to the conversation. I try and research certain things that I know I want to speak about. But that's not me every day, and it's not a normal conversation. It's the closest thing we've got, I believe, to a conversation. That is always my intention, to bring this to as real as possible. But as we know, we're being recorded, so it's not always possible to be your real self.
It is possible.
Okay.
To a degree. Of course, you've got a camera looking at you. So that creates a little bit of like, okay, adjustment period. But I think in the conversation, I think it is possible to be yourself. But actually just bringing back to what I'm saying, I've just realized how some people don't have this privilege of sharing freely. Is what I've just realized and experienced. Like everyone that you've invited probably have this freedom, like I can share freely without consequences. Of course, we can go in detail about what I'm trying to say. What are those consequences? Who's watching you? Who's listening to you? But actually, when you go to different parts of the world, women are not even allowed to speak. And if they do, what is it that they're saying? And what are the consequences? Yeah. But yes.
Absolutely. I think it can be a big metaphor for how we're all showing up in the world. We always know to some degree when we're being watched, when we're out in public, when we're around others. We know that people are listening.
Oh yeah, they are listening to us right now.
Yeah, exactly. But the podcast can be a metaphor for how people are showing up in your life, because this has been your journey. It's part of my journey. It's why we connect.
Yes.
It's how can I show up more real, more aligned, more truthful?
Yes.
And that's my intention with the podcast, but it's also been my journey of like, noticing the times where I haven't been truthful. I'm lying to that person. Why? And trying to understand who am I within it all. Or not just who am I, because that's a ridiculously simple question for a complex thing. Not complicated, but complex. So it's more around, who do I want to be? Do I want to be someone that has integrity? Let my thoughts match my words? Noticing when I'm out of integrity.
And that's a process. It is a process. To really, the process, the flex is to not give a fuck. Am I allowed to say that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, do you care? Do you give a fuck about people taking offence to not giving a fuck?
I don't give a fuck. I honestly don't.
So, if you don't give a fuck, then what's the hesitation around sharing, and what are the consequences for you?
I think it's more personal.
So maybe repercussions.
Repercussions. And they're the same thing. Consequence.
For sure.
Repercussion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the repercussions of speaking truthfully. Which affects other people.
Sure. Yeah, I noticed that when I started talking about relationship, and one of my first podcasts, I didn't consider it. Because I'm an open book. Like I want that to be the pillar of the podcast, to be like, I'm sharing it all, but not taking into account other people, and if they want that to be shared or not. And relationships is a big one, because agreeing on what is public and what's not. And I've never even considered that as a thing. But it's a big burden for people that are in the limelight, are sharing their journey.
Yes, it is. And it depends what they're sharing. I think it depends what their journey is. Some journeys are actually easy shareable, that doesn't involve other people, which is part of the experiences, which causes consequences. And also, not a lot of people are in this position where I don't give a fuck kind of position. So you need to be a little bit cautious and gentle and sensitive about other people as you're speaking publicly, even though you feel free as a person, if that makes sense.
Is that a general statement? Saying, when people say I don't care what people think, like, is that true? Because,
what do you mean by that, though?
Is that a true statement for anyone?
That they don't care?
Yeah, because I think that's just, we all care. We all have to care what people think of us.
Depends. I actually don't care if it involves me expressing myself and expressing my inner freedom and expressing my authenticity. I don't care. I don't want to know your opinion. If it's not in a clear intention of what you're sharing about me, if it's not for my personal growth, and often, truthfully, it's not, because everyone's projecting, reflecting. So a lot of the times, whatever, especially when you are expressing authentically, clearly, and freely, it triggers people. So I don't care, but I care when it's me hurting somebody else, intentionally. I'm willing to hear and listen and see if we can meet in the middle. But if it's really to really speak about my truth, I don't care. Or to express my truth, I don't care. I think, and it's difficult to get to this
blurred
position.
Lines.
Oh?
Blurred lines as well.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Because what might be true for you is you speaking your truth, but that may hurt someone else. But that might be an opportunity for them to grow. And this is where spirituality gets a little toxic at times, or toxic positivity comes in. Because if we're all just, it's the classic, I'm speaking my truth, and if that hurts you, then you need to do some other inner work. You know,
Well,
that
it
gets
depends.
thrown around a lot.
I think it depends how you're sharing your truth. But a lot of the time, we live in a world that people don't speak truth. So often, when anyone, even speaking, for me, when I speak my truth, or any way of how I express myself, it comes with a certain tone. It comes with a clear intention. It comes from a heart centered. So with that clarity, I don't care, because I know I'm coming from a very aligned way of communicating something.
What do you think?
Blood, maybe, yes, depends on perspective. I think we live in a world people don't speak the truth.
Yeah, sure.
So everyone gets triggered when someone's speaking the truth, because we're all hiding to a degree. I mean, this is generalizing, but
what do you think? A few things why people do that, or maybe why you did it in the past, or maybe speak from your experience. But in general, why do people not speak their truth?
Let's try to bring it to me, back to me. Of course, it was a process. I was not born this way, because we are born, and then we're brought up in a specific way through culture, religion, government, and the general way of how we were brought up to communicate is not to speak authentically. It is to people please in some ways. It's about other people instead of you. So I previously communicate in a way where I want to be liked. I want to be accepted, and then I want to be belonged.
What was the root of that?
Not getting all of that in my environment, not feeling that, not getting nurtured as a child to receive all that. So then I become this thing that wants all that by expressing it in this way in all parts of my relationship. But then over a period of time of shedding, dying and rebirthing, and repeating the cycle of cleansing, I'm in this position that I feel very calm and happy within my space, and I'm really happy to speak my truth, and it's okay if someone doesn't like me, because I know it's actually nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm. So could you talk us about some life-defining moments? What were some of the big things that happened in your early years?
My early years.
That shaped you, for better or worse, you know? Like, ultimately, it's all allowed you to be sat here right now.
Yeah. I actually have had a very difficult life from a very, very young age. I was brought up in a dysfunctional upbringing, which had already naturally inbuilt this desire to be better from a young child. I'm not so sure if it's a soul kind of whisper from a young child, or it's a whisper when you're in an environment that is difficult. I don't know which one comes, or they come together. But without speaking too much about the young parts of my life, apart from that, I have been brought up in a dysfunctional upbringing that had affected me tremendously in my life, which led me to spend many, many years to untangle this results of being brought up in such an environment. Yeah, does that answer that?
Potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
So where in the world were you? When did you grow up?
I was born in Malaysia. Born, brought up Malaysian, Kuala Lumpur. I left when I was 18. And here I am in London.
You left 18?
Yeah.
On your birthday?
I can't really... No, actually, maybe 3 months after my birthday.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you? Were you solo? Were you just...
I was solo! I was incredibly excited to leave Malaysia. Purely because...
tax is so high.
So high. I didn't have to pay anything at home in Malaysia, so I didn't have to pay the bills. I didn't have to cook the food.
So was that quite daunting?
No, it was exciting. I had this strong desire to actually work hard and suffer. I don't know why. It's like to really feel what it is like to be human. I wanted to work hard. I want to struggle. I want to feel what it's like to make money and pay my bills and wash my clothes. The very simple thing: wash my clothes, cook my food. Don't cook my clothes. Don't do that.
Why do you think that comes from? Why do you think you had that?
I think it's the feeling of wanting to prove that I can do it. But also, there's this feeling within me that I'm meant to be something. I'm meant to do something powerful on planet Earth, and this was just the very tiny steps to get there. If I can't cook my own food, if I can't wash my clothes, if I can't work to pay my own bills, how the hell am I going to do this, But, it brings more power to be able to do that in another country. And London is a really tough city. For someone that comes from Malaysia, where everything is actually pretty cushy. A lot of kids live with their family even after they get married, so you don't have to worry about paying rent. Food, eating out is pretty cheap, and a lot of people at home has a maid. So everything in that way is not tough. All you need to do is go to work and come back home. The tough part is, the family bit, where you're not allowed to be yourself. Where you have to suppress your inner expression. That for me was tough. But also I was excited to leave Malaysia because Malaysia is a Muslim country and I'm not Muslim. And the priorities are given to the Muslims. And with that awareness, thankfully my father was a very amazing person in this way, where he wanted us to make sure that we had freedom. So he was really pushing us to make sure that we left the country. So leaving Malaysia, so those were the few things. One, I wanted to really just be an adult. Two, getting freedom away from a country that doesn't give fairness to everybody. And yeah, I kind of knew my soul was not suitable for Malaysia. I know I probably would get into a lot of trouble, knowing how I was already from a young child. I was very outspoken. I needed to speak the truth. I would do whatever I wanted to do as a person, and it's not very welcome with this kind of behavior or this kind of character in Malaysia, and especially that I'm a woman as well.
You could see this as an archetypical, maybe, if that's even a word, of stories and narratives in films and what's portrayed, where none that come to mind, but it happens. And do you see that? Have you seen that quite common, like people leaving the country due to that, people leaving, ideologies and things that don't align with them?
Don't get me wrong, Malaysia as a Muslim country is probably one of the most westernized country you're going to get, but still has its its flaws. I think it depends. A lot of Malaysians stays in Malaysia because it's beautiful life. The weather is great. The food is amazing. You do have a very comfortable life. And most of the time you see... This is a bit of a generalizing. That you
My experience was very different when I travelled in Malaysia.
Okay.
What I saw, I travelled up the west coast.
Right.
From Singapore.
And what was your experience?
That there was a lot of disparity of rich and poor. That was quite, it was quite evident.
In Malaysia?
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Yeah, from what I remember.
Malaysia is, you don't see it in a very extreme way. Like in India, for an example. You do have that disparity, but not in a very extreme way. But you do see it. But more so, going back to what I was about to say, you would see a lot of Malaysians going back to Malaysia because it's an easy life and it's hard in London. And if you are brought up in a way where everything is much more easy and all you need to worry about is go to work and come back, if you don't have a greater calling to be someone, to do something with life, you generally choose comfortableness. Right.
Have you been back since?
Yeah, many times. I mean, I've been here for 18 years, but I have not been back for 6 years now.
You're 36.
I'm 38.
38.
I'm going to be 39.
Wow.
Yeah. Can you believe it?
I see.
Is this the first time you know my age?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really ask people's ages these days.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to check in with that because I don't really see that as a factor anymore.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know if people do, but
I do.
Once you get past to you, because of my hair, you were like, oh, he's close to 40.
How young are you?
How young am I?
Yeah.
I like that. Not old. I'm 33 years young.
Wow.
There you go. Age of Christ.
Wow. Important time of your life.
It's all important.
It's all important.
It's all irrelevant and all important. Okay, so... Yeah, this has been a big journey. So you've been back a few times.
Yeah.
What's it like going back there? And is it sad? Have you had to grieve a lot? Has it been a big part of your...
Why grieving? Why did grieving come out in your question? Are you trying to aim for something? Did you go back and grieve a lot?
Well, when you leave somewhere that you had, bonds with and forged relationships, I'm sure, over many years, it sounds like it was all exciting and all like adventurous. I'm wondering if there was also sadness and grief that you've had to sit with and accept, and those types of feelings that having been a part of a country for so long and then not.
I think a lot of the grieving took place when I left the first time. I had a feeling that this would change everything, even though this wasn't the best thing I had. It was something I had, which I didn't want to let go of, and which at that point was a misconception of what love is, and what belonging is, and what you need to do to be loved and accepted. And I just was attached to what I had because I had nothing else. So leaving it, was really difficult. It was really difficult to, most of all, say goodbye to my mom. And, I just don't know how it would change our relationship. I love my mom so much. So that was a lot of the grieving. I think most of it is just leaving my mom and saying goodbye to her. But every time I went back, it became easier. But there was always this like goodbye and then come back here, because knowing this is where my life is right now. And then over the years it just became easier. But going back home was always difficult, because I'm here in London doing whatever I want to do, and I'm free and I'm an adult. I pay my own bills now, and I wash my own clothes and I cook for myself. And I can say whatever I want to say, and I can do whatever I want to do, even though I wasn't fully utilizing it at that time because I was still, peeling the layers to go, I'm free. Going back just brought me back of where you're going, what time are you coming back, just and like all this like scrutiny of like, why are you doing this? And it was a glitch in my head, you know. It's like, why? So it was usually quite stressful when I go back home. Stressful. It wasn't a holiday, it was stress. But that's, I think, very common when you spend time with family. Yeah.
What's your relationship like to belonging now?
What is my relationship to belonging right now? It's a ever-growing and evolving relationship, but I think for me the belonging is feeling belong within myself. Feeling really happy when I go back to sleep and I'm like, this feels peaceful. And then waking up going, wow, this feels good. Feeling belonging within myself, and then naturally attracting people that are the same kind of flavor and taste and expression, in different expressions within the same expressions, and then belonging in that space. And I think for me now, the relationship with belonging is just a heart-centered, I love you, you love me, and I accept you and you accept me. That's the relationship I have with belonging. And I think it comes with me first. I love me, and I accept me, and then it comes out and outpour in that way with other people, and then they do the same thing for me. And it's been a very natural evolution with that. There was no forcing in belonging. I think that's my relationship with belonging.
Yeah, I like that. There's no forcing in belonging.
Yeah.
You talked about peeling back the layers. Could you talk about that journey to where you're at now?
I can. There's so much to it, so I won't be able to speak into all of it.
Just some things that, because what you mentioned, going to sleep and waking, like that peacefulness that you have. Is that a common feeling?
Now, yes.
Like that's an ideal for some people. I'd love to unpick like that journey towards that and what that's been like.
Yeah. I could say, so I'll share one very big part of the peeling the layers and dying and rebirthing. Of course, there was many, but this one was the deepest in a way where it really created a massive shift in my life. And that was when I was 32 and I got diagnosed with bipolar. And at this point, I myself was judgmental about people who had bipolar because I was not educated by it, and I was surrounded by people who was voicing up about that person's got bipolar and they're a bit of a troublemaker, or my ex-partner's she's got diagnosed with bipolar and she's a troublemaker. And it was just this kind of narrative, and then I got diagnosed with it, and that really shocked me, surprised me, confused me, and really changed my life completely. I was really fearful that I was going to lose my job. I was working in finance at this point. I was really fearful I was going to lose my partner at that time, which I did. And I was really fearful that everybody was going to think that I was crazy and I won't be able to have a relationship. And also, the people who were very judgmental about my expression were going to go, this makes sense now, she's bipolar. And then I was faced with taking medication, which I was very against prior to being diagnosed. But then now I'm confronted by this this diagnosis, and I had no idea which way to go. I had like a bunch of friends saying, don't take the medication, and then a bunch of them going, you have to take it. If you've got a chemical imbalance, then you gotta have to take take medication. And at this point, I was really, quote unquote, in people's picture, living the best life, the coolest life. I was an extreme climber. I was a skydiver. I was a highliner. I was a photographer, and like traveling around the world, and then having spontaneous flights to jump, like literally go to Spain and go to a drop zone and jump off a plane. And that's how I lived my life, in a very extreme way. I lived life. Extreme sports was a big part of my life at this point. And then with this diagnosis, everything had to stop immediately.
So how did this show up for you day to day?
I mean, at this point, because my mental health was deteriorating, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at this point, my life was already pretty messy mentally. That affected my physical body, actually, more than on a mental perspective. And then being diagnosed in this way, I felt like my whole identity got ripped off. Literally got ripped off, because everything had to stop. And then you're given with this, you're presented with this identity. Now you are bipolar. And that's how the doctor presented it to me. It was very depressing. And it depressed me further because I decided to take medication, and the side effects was depression, amongst many other things.
That's a marketing term. It's a direct effect.
Yes.
It's not a side effect.
It's the direct effect, literally.
So how did it show up for you day to day, and what, because there's a part missing around, like what led you to seek, okay, maybe there's something that I'm not seeing here, maybe I need to go see someone to understand this.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that conversation back. Before I got diagnosed, I was training 3 to 4 times a day, and then I was slacklining, and then I was flying. I was just non-stop. And I have to train. If I don't train, I don't feel happy. And also I'm like, my body it had to look a specific way. It had to stay strong at a specific, because I climb at very high levels. So I was always on the go. And when, over a period of time, gradually I started to decline, and I started to get physically unwell. I started to feel incredibly exhausted, and I was not sleeping at all, and at points it would go on for over a month, and my bones were aching. I had really bad tummy problems, so everything was showing up on a physical perspective, and my face looked pretty bad. And from doing all the activities and my training, everything started to just decline to the point that I could not get off the bed. And I was just physically unwell, which led me to go see the GP. And then the GP is like, I'm so sorry, I think you're depressed, but I also need to refer you to a psychiatrist. And that's when I received the diagnosis from a physical experience. Obviously, during the time when I shared certain information with the GP, which is why it led her to believe that I was depressed, basically.
Mm-hmm. As a symptom of the lifestyle that you had?
As the symptoms of other things that came out through being in... Yeah.
The lifestyle that you had was distracting you from?
It wasn't the lifestyle.
You were distracting yourself from how you were feeling, which was rooted back to other things.
Personally, I wouldn't say it was distracting me. It was actually keeping me alive.
Okay.
But ultimately, there's so much that a body and a mind can handle when you're not taking time to deal with your emotions when there are really deep wounds that needs attention. They will surface in this way. So for me, it surfaced in this way.
So why bipolar? And what are your feelings about that now? Has that changed?
Definitely. I mean, like that experience, it led for 3 years, and then I got diagnosed with ADHD, and they wanted to add a little bit more other diagnoses, but the two prominent ones were bipolar and ADHD. I don't resonate with bipolar at all right now, after spending many years of deep healing. My view on mental health after experiencing it in a 360 way is when we don't spend time to heal our wounds, and then you keep it under the carpet, and then life happens, and then you put that under the carpet, and then life happens again, and you just put everything under the carpet, eventually it's going to explode. And in this explosion, it will manifest in different ways for different people. And in this manifestation, in Western medicine, they would label and say, okay, these are the symptoms, you have bipolar, and this is your symptoms, you have ADHD. I mean, ADHD is a little bit more complex, I think, but these are basically the labels. And then they feed you medication, and then in this medication, ultimately, it's just a plaster to further suppress everything that you've not looked at, and then you live a very lifeless life for a period of time, which works for some people,
for the limited amount of people.
And
but because it works for some, you can't discount it.
Yes, no.
And it's shamed when people pick apart the mass prescription of medication because it works for a certain amount of people.
Completely.
But it's very sad to actually hear, for me to hear that you went through so many years, and this is just my experience of being around people that have ADHD who have gone to understand it more with professionals, and then they get given the term, it's bipolar, and if they didn't know themselves or some of this kind of like some of these terms, then they'd have just handed their life over to someone that tells them exactly who they are and what they've got and what to do about it.
Completely. That's what happened to me. My life was given to somebody for 3 years. And within that 3 years, you go further down and down because, for an instance, with bipolar medication, it's incredibly powerful. It takes time for your body to get used to it. So they will give you like a small dosage for a month, and then the next month they will higher that dosage, and each time they higher that dosage, you have a very intense, at least I personally experienced this, intense side effects to the point that I lost my memory. My memory got really bad. I lost my hair. I put on a lot of weight. My hands were shaking, and every time they increased the dosage, I wouldn't even know where I'm in the room. And this would continue over a period of time until they found the right dosage for you. So you're in this cycle for a long time, and then once you found that balance, then if you want to get off it, you have to go back to that cycle again, and you got to go through this, like, let's say it took you 1 year to lead up to find the right dosage. It will take you 1 year to get off the medication, and that comes with a whole different emotional journey, a whole set of mental health experiences that you have to go through. It really robs your life in this way. At least for me, I felt like that, but I would not take away those experiences because of where I am right now.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, okay, so back it up a little bit, being diagnosed, then having medication, and there was 2 sets of medication, one to send me to sleep, and the other one's to stop the high and one's to stop the low. And I was in this journey for about, my timelines are not going to be exact, but let's say about like close to 1 year to 2 years. And then when I felt like, I can breathe again, well, at that point, it felt great, but it's actually not the great spot compared to where I was. But I felt like I could breathe again. I was like, I desire to get back into my adventure life, my extreme self, because it is me. It is a big part of who I am. So I had booked a solo trip to Mongolia. And it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. Such a magical place, such a beautiful, beautiful place, but yet I was in this stunning magical place and I could not feel good about it. And all my pain was just surfacing out. And when I had come back from Mongolia, it got really, really intense, and I had lost the will to live. And it was when I decided to take my life, and which had led me to a psychiatric hospital for 2 months. And in this journey, that's when I got diagnosed with ADHD, and they wanted to add a little bit, another diagnosis, but it didn't come into fruition.
So,
yeah.
when you decided you wanted to take your own life,
Yeah.
what did that look like?
For me specifically, it's actually been a lifelong struggle.
So you've had those thoughts?
Yeah, I've had it since I was very young. It's something that I have consistently battled with. And actually, this is the first time I'm speaking quite openly in this way. I've had it since a very young child. I think I tried when I was really young. No, I think I did. But when you're young, you don't really have the strength. But it's like a halfway thing, So I attempt.
How old were you then?
If I'm correct with the numbers, I think about 9 years old. And yeah, so I struggle with these thoughts throughout my life. And when you're young, at least for me, when I'm young, I have this strength. I am this very strong, powerful person. But when you're fighting this battle of suicide, it can get really exhausting to fall on the ground and then dust it off and start again. And that was just my life consistently. And then along with other struggles in life. Mm-hmm. So over the period of time, I had lost the energy, the oomph to get up again and then dust it off. And then when I had this diagnosis, it had really brought up a lot of my very unresolved quote-unquote trauma. So everything just became such a burden, and I just really lost the energy, the will to fight. So when I came back from Mongolia, I just couldn't do it anymore, because it wasn't only a mental thing, it was a physical thing for me too. I felt physical pain. And I lost the will when I came back from Mongolia, basically. Whilst it was a very painful experience, it was also a very beautiful experience, which had obviously led me to a psychiatric hospital for 2 months. And that was very confusing for me. Like, this whole experience was very confusing for me, this diagnosis and this journey, and then being in a psychiatric hospital, then having someone to sit in front of your door. It's like, I'm like, am I in this movie? This is so surreal. I know this is not me. I'm not bipolar and all this, but here I am experiencing this, whilst it was very confusing, it was something that I really needed. Being in that hospital for 2 months, we had group therapy, and in that group therapy, over a period of time, I slowly opened up, because I was someone that was not able to open up. I was always there for people, but I was unable to access my own emotions and share it in front of other people because I was not important. My feelings was not worthy to be shared. And I remembered very well when we were in group therapy at the beginning of the journey, I felt so trapped inside of me, and I could hear everyone sharing, and I knew I needed help desperately. And
what's coming up for you?
Just reconnecting to the pain, you know. It's very hard to explain to people what the journey is like, and the pain and the suffering of being so internalized and no one can reach you for help. And at this point, when everybody left the group therapy, I sat there and I broke down. And I cried because I was so worried that I was going to die. And it was very real for me. Because I knew I need help, and I knew nobody could gain access to me because I couldn't even open up. So I freaked out, because at that point I was like, I am really going to die. As much as I tried it, I actually don't want to. And I always had this thought in my head, you know, when I watch all the celebrities at late on of their life, at 40 or 50, and they end their life. I could really resonate with it very well, and I always felt that was going to be me, because I'm going to lose the energy to fight, the will to fight, because as you get older it becomes difficult if you're consistently doing this without getting help. So I went back to my room and I broke down, and it was a very, very hard day for me. And then the next day was a new day, you know. And then I tried. And I tried, and I opened myself up as much as I could. And then eventually I opened, not completely, but, you know, enough for me to get help. Enough for me to share my pain and my struggle. And that was really beautiful, because for me, going back to the symptoms of bipolar, it's like there was this little tiny rat running in my head, and I don't know what it is, and it's stuck in there, you know, and then it creates this behavior, this like unstable, ungrounded, and a little bit erratic, and very excited and very energetic, but not in a healthy expression way. And when I actually got to share what was happening with me in my life, and all the years of suppression of everything that was not shared and suppressed, it's now on paper. It's no longer in my head like a little rat running, you know. So then my mind's a little bit more settled. It's like,
what do you mean by it's on paper?
Like when you haven't shared your wounds and it's sitting in your head, usually it's sitting in your subconscious. And then when you are trying to vocalize something, you're kind of indirectly tapping into your subconscious to bring out the suppressed memory or an emotion or whatever it is that caused you pain, or bring out the pain. So then you bring it out, and it's no longer sitting there, not being seen, not being validated, not being spoken out to. So now it's out on paper, and it's no longer sitting in my subconscious in this way that is manifesting in a very unhealthy symptoms, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And that's where my process started, you know. Going for group therapy, but you know, when you come out of the hospital, the system is pretty messed up.
Yeah, it's failing people.
Yeah.
So where was the first group session that you sat, and where this all
they
kind of unfurled?
They were all in the hospital.
In the psychiatric.
Yeah. And then once a lot of things came out in that 2 months, a lot of things that I could not remember came out. A lot of things that I thought was okay, I realized and learned it was not okay. So that means what happens is when you're in these spaces, you open a whole can of worms, and then you revisit your old wounds, and then I personally experience PTSD during this experience, which caused a lot of night terrors. It's very common actually when you revisit something and you open a whole can of worms that you've not visited at all.
Mm-hmm.
It will manifest in the night as night terrors. And then when that 2 months had come up and I was leaving, I had not had any support. And then I've also have this bunch of things that I've now opened up, and I don't have anyone to support me, help me in any way. I was very alone at this point of my life. And I went back to really bad habits. I can't believe I'm sharing all this, by the way. But it flows, so
You're doing a great job at articulating a very intense period.
So when I had left the hospital, I had gone back to really bad habits, and that was binge eating. And I was sleeping till 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would just eat. Because I just don't know how else to deal with this. There was a lot of things that had come out, and at the same time I'm still on medication, and now I am on another medication, which is ADHD medication, which gets you hyper. And then I've got the bipolar that's like stopping your highs and your lows, and ADHD gets you high. It really is a very confusing thing for your body. And going through every single day in my bed, and this was how I felt. I felt like this is not me, and I felt that I don't belong here, and I just woke up to a very powerful awakening that no one was going to save me except myself. And I realized the doctors didn't know what they were doing. As much as I knew very subtly, it was a very strong, prominent thought that came in my head, and I was like, no one's going to save me, and the only person that can get me out of this is me. And I have so much to live for, and I have so much to give to this world, and I know I'm here for a reason. I got to get myself out of this mess. And really did the very basic things, which was really to get up and brush my teeth, and have a shower and make my bed. It was all these very, very basic things that at this point I could not do. And before I had experienced this point, I never understood what people meant by I couldn't brush my teeth, I couldn't make my bed, I couldn't have my shower, and here I'm experiencing this. It was just like, wow, this is so surreal. And I start with the most little thing. And I did this. Brush my teeth, have the shower, make my bed. And at this point, actually, the one diagnosis that I really resonate was ADHD. And I experience ADHD in a very extreme way, and it can be very, I hope I can pronounce this word properly, disabilitating.
Debilitating.
Debilitating. There we go. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I could clean my room, and then within seconds, everything gets into a messy state. And I'm like, I don't want this, but I don't know how to get out of it. But over the period of time of really doing deep healing, I was able to really work my way through that. And then I just went after that, doing all this very little things, and I decided I need to go for therapy. And I was doing twice a week on therapy, and then it led on from that, bits and bobs, and then learning to speak my truth and knowing what was going to come out of that. Losing people, shedding people, and then I was going through this very deep grieving of like, okay, I know I need to speak my truth and I can't hide anymore. And nobody knew where I was for this 3 years. Everybody knew Sunita was this very strong climber, very cool chick, jumping off planes, and then suddenly she disappeared. So nobody knew what happened to me. I just went in hiding. Not deliberately, but I disappeared, and so nobody knew what happened to me. And I kind of knew one of the things that I felt called at that point was really to publicly speak and address this. But also I knew how this would affect my family, and what would happen as a result of sharing. And 2 sharing came out of this. One was my mental health, and 2 was my sexuality. I was just like, wow, I'm 30 something and I still don't want to be free about my sexuality. This is insane, considering that I'm actually a very free person. Why am I so ashamed? And I understood it wasn't my shame that I was carrying. It was other people's shame. And I really, through this process, I really needed to really set myself free. Because I really felt the chain on my leg with this big metal ball that I've been carrying, and it was not mine. And I knew it was really up to me to cut it off and set myself free. And I also am very, 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 very aware of those consequences. I would have to lose a lot of things. So yeah, I went publicly about my mental health. And then after I went publicly about my sexuality, and to be honest, now looking back at it, for me, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But when you're at that very new process, it's a really big deal for you.
Yeah. How big of a factor do you think holding that idea or story around your sexuality, holding that for many years, I don't know how do you think that played into this, and how big of a factor was it?
I think really, I didn't think it was a big deal, but I knew sharing it was a big deal because I knew my family wouldn't be very happy about this. Mm-hmm. That was the big deal about it. I didn't really care.
Yeah, I mean, with all of this you've gone through, how big of a factor was you perhaps caring a lot about what other people thought and holding other people's judgments and shame of you? How much of a factor did that play into all of what you've just gone through? And I guess you wouldn't have known until it happened, and when you did, let's say, come out.
So if I got your question right,
what was the weight that was lifted when you did publicly?
I was just like, oh, wow, okay. I'm free. And I can breathe. I can breathe in it. I can breathe and no longer share, no longer hiding who I am, and no longer feeling shame. And actually, it's just a step, really, and it's not far. That step is just one step forward and one step backwards. It's really a mental concept, and once I made that step, it was just really, it felt like I belonged sitting there. So there was no big shift per se, apart from now I've just set myself free. It's just an ability to breathe deeper, and then coming back to what you were saying, the ability to just sleep in peace and wake up in peace, going, this feels good. This is me. And I'm happy with me. I'm happy with the choices I've made. I'm happy with who I am. Of course, there's always work and it's forever, but I'm no longer hiding. And for me, that has always been a big problem as a human being on planet Earth. I cannot hide. I cannot pretend. I cannot carry other people's shame. I cannot carry other people's guilt, and I cannot not speak the truth, at least my truth. And when I do that, and I'm being honest with myself, I can go to sleep in peace, and I can wake up in peace. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How much did community come into this? You said around group therapy and group sharing, and how pivotal that was for you. And sharing your experience with others who would validate it, not judge it, and just listen so it could be witnessed.
Mm.
And you must have felt safe to do that. How much of a factor do you think that played in all this? Because I think it just this your journey, it speaks to what so many people will be going through right now. It alone.
Mm.
And something present for me lately is that this is causing such a perpetuation of all these things that we are alone with these thoughts, these ideas around what we are, what we're not, and how much that keeps us stuck, stagnant, and unable to express our truth, because we have a constant loop in the background of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not accepted, I'm not seen, it's all on me kind of thing. But what I witness helping the most people is community, is group therapy, is doing things together, is sharing together. Other people witnessing, everyone, us sharing and really coming together to understand things about ourselves through the lens of and reflection of other people.
I think there's different parts to this. So if we speak into the group therapy that I was in, in some ways it wasn't the ideal group for me. It wasn't the ideal setup per se, but it was what I was given. So when you don't have anything, it's a lot. So in that perspective, I was desperate. If we put it in that way, even though I was not acting desperate, I am desperate, and I need this, whatever, how it looks, shape, or sound, or whoever that was holding it. It wasn't ideal, but it was something, and I knew I needed to use this, and I knew I needed to open up in front of people. So in this way, it was beneficial to speak things out to a bunch of humans that are equally suffering, and I don't know who they are, because I've never spoken it out to anybody. So this is good practice. And then secondly, over a period of time, that changed, because now I've opened up, I've shared, now there's this opportunity of, actually this wasn't the ideal circle or group that was for me, but when you open up, you change the relationship, and then you see differently, and you go, oh, actually everyone's really beautiful here, and everyone's struggling, everybody wants to help each other as much as we can. But then moving forward, as I deepened my journey, this was the only support in this way that I had. And then it was fleeting. It was just a period of time, and then it disappeared. Throughout this journey, I've been pretty much very alone in this way. And I think for me, I think everyone has their own path. For me specifically, whether I choose it or it chose me, I needed to go through most of my great difficulties and my dark times by myself, and learn and educate myself, and use my inner wisdom and my inner compass to navigate myself out of it, in order for me to be this person that I am today. And then from there, build the true authentic community that I have around, where we help each other. And I can bring all the knowledge and the wisdom that I have and the experience actually and help other people. And other people help me in different ways. Community is really important. It's not something I really understood very well, purely because my journey has been very solo. And actually it's only been in the past maybe 2.5 years that it's been evolving, and I've been opening in this way, and I've been learning what it is to be in community and being with other people, being able to receive help from people, but also be able, I've always been helping. It's something that I love to do, but the intention of why I'm doing it now is slightly different. It's more connected, but it is really important. It's really important to, I think having community is one thing, but having a community where you are aligned with is another thing. Where you feel like, actually I belong here and I feel settled here. I don't feel like I need to do people pleasing, I need to act in a different way and be someone else. I'm just being me. I think there's different kinds of community, and for me, it gives me medicine, it gives me love, it gives me energy when I'm in a community that I'm aligned with. And for me it's specifically just love, and we're just communicating authentically and truthfully with each other, especially when we're not happy with each other. And that's the kind of community I feel that's in, that I feel that I evolve more and grow more in that way.
More and more common in my life, but I know it's so rare for people. And it's still to a point rare for me. I've had many flavours of that. I don't think I've fully got there yet.
In what sense?
In the community sense, like fully being completely unapologetic and fully settled, relaxed, just myself, not needing to please, not needing to prove, not needing to be anyone other than what's true for me in this moment.
Why do you think that is?
Because I've had many years of normalizing those things, feeling like that's what I need to do. They root back to many other things and childhood stuff and the proving and the doing, constantly doing something. It's very much related to self-worth. So understanding loads of those stuff, and that goes back. I've talked about that a few times, but it's getting closer to that, I think. You know it when it's like time to go to bed, when you're with friends and you're fighting this internal pull that, I should go to sleep now, but now I need to stay up because it's cool to stay up and chat. And I'm like, what is that voice that's still trying to get me to seep in every last ounce of this connection with people because I'm trying to like prove that I'm the fun guy? It's still there, it's still present. It's just always nice to check in with that, and it speaks to that, because do we feel fully able in our relationships to speak to what's true for us, and that is okay, and that's good enough, and I'm accepted and loved for that. There's no conditions around people's love for me. It's rare, but it's possible.
It's also a process, and that process looks very differently for different people. And it always comes down to the very simple things that we all know. Is self-worth and unconditional love for ourselves, or unjudgmental love for ourselves.
And often we put the barriers up before anyone else is able to. Like, we don't give people the permission to take us or leave us because we're not aligning with our truth.
It comes down to truth, it comes down to many things. We can use all kinds of different words to bring it down to what it comes down to. But for me, I resonate very well and strongly with truth. And it's really down to my truth. If I can express my truth, whatever that is, whether the fun side or the naughty side or the wild side or the very deep, intense side of me or the light side or the joyful side, and not hide that, and I can just express it and not care about what people think about me, and I can live with that, and I can live with the consequences of people judging me, speaking about me, and maybe they're not even doing that. And then also live with the consequences of my own paranoia, that maybe people are doing that, and just keep expressing. Then I can be anywhere and then not worry.
I think it's the bigger conversation is our relationship to our own ego, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone the other day about this. Peter, you met the other night, about like I've always had a fear around ego and like what that is. Always trying to keep it in check, because I've noticed in other people what I'd experience where they're not checking in with their ego and they're trying too hard to be liked, or there's just they're socially not as aware as I say I'd like them to be, but I just don't think they're socially. I'm not reading the room, for example, and I've experienced them. Like, okay, that's too much for me. So I've always noticed that. I don't want to be that person. Like, we live in relationship to people in relation. So I've always had this fear of like, I don't want to be seen. I don't actually want to be unconscious about the way I'm not reading the room, being too much right now. Yeah, we've had a bit of fun, but you've taken it too far. Like, now's the time to just, trying to keep that in check. So I've always feared this, and that's become my own like awareness journey, I guess, of like being self-aware and being more self-aware. Okay, how am I showing up in this space? How am I being perceived here? Like, trying to strengthen that awareness of how I'm being in a situation. Not being as compassionate as I could be, or when's the time to turn on that and turn off that, and
it's like every different parts of the growing mindset or journey, you can do too much and too little, and then doing both over a period of time, you would find the balance.
Sure.
And I think ego is for me, when I experience... Have you read New Earth by Eckhart Tolle?
No.
You need to read it. It's all about ego. It's an easy read and the most amazing book I've ever read. And it speaks about the body pain. It speaks about a lot of things, but it really focuses on ego specifically. And then through my journey about, shedding and etc., and then reading this book, and I was like, all about focusing on the ego and like eradicating ego, and just being like this monk, and like, don't share anything good about you, don't share anything nice, just listen, and just like, oh, it's coming out, no, just don't be human, And then I went to one extreme, and in that process the ego was in so much play, because I realized I was playing small. There's this confusion of like being humble or taking too much space because my ego wants it. But then that's the ego too, because it's like, now I'm going to play small. And then it feeds into different parts, like, okay, is it because you're also scared to be seen? And then it comes back to this whole thing of being authentic. If you're being authentic, take space. If you worked your ass off and you've done so much deep inner work, and now you're ready to like stand in your power, and that means it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, then that's not your problem. Because then you're coming from a very authentic space. Your intention is also very clear. Why are you taking space right now? Because I just want to be heard. Okay, then that's the ego. But if you're taking space because you're like, I'm here right now to serve a purpose, so that means I need to speak. And if that means taking space, then take space. And that means if it's going to make someone uncomfortable, so be it. You're giving them a gift. But to get there, it's just like really learning a lot about yourself. And I think it's like an education about yourself and really understanding what's showing up for you and who you are and who you are not. And that comes with peeling the layers, dying and rebirthing, and just keep doing it again and again and again and again and again, and then coming to understand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And having a good amount of ego is necessary in order for you to strive and to achieve things, to reach for ambitious goals, extravagant goals. You need the ego. As long as you utilize it in a not toxic way, it is incredibly beneficial for us as humanity. But the flex is also, how can we do that? It comes down, for me personally, it comes down to healing. That's been my personal journey, is healing and going deeper within.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your journey back to yourself.
I didn't think I was going to share this, but it felt right.
I think there was a little resistance at the start.
There was a lot of resistance. I'm going to reveal this part of myself.
It's really beautiful because it speaks to I'm like here for you. The messaging around like sharing this is around the system that we are a part of and we sometimes accept. And it's educating people about themselves. What is the ego? Like learning about these parts of ourselves and what symptoms and signals our bodies, trying to communicate to us about. But then it is around, we need to educate ourselves and stop looking externally to these systems that no one's in charge of and no one's looking at. It's kind of this perpetual system that we're feeding into and we're giving permission to, without realizing it. We're feeding into a bigger problem that's not helping us at all in a wider sense.
Question to you. So at some point of our...
What do you say, sorry?
A question to you.
A question to me.
Yeah. It's okay. Not a lot of people can understand what I'm saying. This Malaysian accent or the way I speak sometimes. Accepting myself, loving myself. When we were sharing, there was a point that you were tearing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What was showing up for you?
There were several times. There was one specific time when you were talking about, let me remember as I talk, it was about you not wanting to get out, doing the small things, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, and like doing that thing. It wasn't that I can relate to that, but which likely would have made me emotional, like really connecting with your experience. But it was more about, I know that is a reality for a lot of people and how sad that is. And I was really feeling that sadness of how many people are going through it right now and doing it on their own. And it's normalized. It's very normal in a lot of people's lives. I just know it is true. A lot of people will be experiencing that right now and feeling like it's just their existence. A lot of people will go their whole lives feeling that. It's just incredibly sad.
Yeah, very, very, very sad.
And we need to feel that sadness because it's a motivator. Suffering is a perfect precursor for growth, and it needs to be felt. It needs to be really felt, because if we don't feel it, we can't heal it, I guess.
Completely. It's like, slightly different, but when people smoke, they can't feel what's happening to their body, so they keep smoking. Or we keep going on with our lives, not really connecting to the true pain on planet Earth. Whilst actually there's so many beautiful things that are happening too. So it's like, it's not all dark and gloomy, but there are real suffering on planet Earth. And really connecting to that grounds us a little bit, and allows us to appreciate and have gratitude for what we have, first of all, and then also to have compassion deeply for other people before we judge them. Because you just don't know what's happening in someone's life. You have no clue what they're struggling with, what are they suffering with, and it's very quickly and easily for us to judge someone because they've triggered you, or if they behave or spoke in a specific way that didn't suit your world. But there's always a story behind everything.
Context.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to mention something. Escaped me. Damn it. Come back.
While it escaped you, just really bringing back a little bit, I feel for someone that gone through the mental health journey, and the experience, and
I've got it again.
Okay, good. I'm glad I helped you with that. The system. There we go. Going through the mental health system, I feel very grateful that I'm just genuinely a very strong. I'm very resilient as a human being. I'm very, very strong. I have this internal strength within me that I'm very aware. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have this, especially when they're going through such experiences. It's very difficult for someone to pull themselves out of this experience by themselves. This is one of my deep reasons of why I'm showing up and guiding people to do the inner work, because I know it's very difficult, and I'm aware that it's not easy for someone to pull themselves out. They need someone else to reach out to them and then pull them and show them what they already have inside of them. You need someone to help you. A lot of the time we do.
I think because you intentionally sought hard things, that made you into a strong person. When you were like, I'm going to cook my food, I'm going to wash my clothes, I'm going to go out there and build that strength I need to be a powerful person. Like when I cycled from England to Turkey, I was like, I want to be the person on the other side of that. I want to do these things to meet who I'm going to be. And we don't have strength unless we go through challenging things. So it's like actively seek that out. This is wisdom. It's very important to strengthen your resolve. And the one thing I was going to say earlier, which feeds into like feeling the sadness of everything, and we don't really want to feel that because it's not comfortable. But unless we feel the sadness, we won't feel the highs as much as possible. I mean, we put these labels in hierarchy and high and lows, but the highs are joy experiences, so we're not going to feel them as much if we don't feel the sads.
Completely.
There's a quote from Nick Mulvey that I keep saying, it's the courage to feel it all. And that really resonates, because we have to have the courage to feel the sadness, because you will feel the highs even greater. And that's the life I chose. 10 years of like strengthening the courage to feel it all, like going deeper and wanting to have that conversation with people more and more. And now I experience both extremes even greater. But if I don't go to those lows, I'm not going to reach the highs even more. And is that, I don't know. Yeah, bipolar features in those things. Feeling everything greatly, it's like, that to me seems more human, and there's a lot to be sad about, but there's a lot to be joyful and grateful and thankful about.
Yeah, I agree with you on you have to feel all the uncomfortable feelings, to be able to fully immerse into joy, happiness, love, all the beautiful things on planet Earth. You can really immerse, not just feel it, but like immerse into those feelings when you have allowed yourself to really immerse into great pain and feel all the pain and discomfort that you have within you. And it does take courage, but sadly, because we've been educated that way. If we were educated differently and this education system was different, you don't need courage. It's just part of your practice.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that
true.
difficult. You just sit there and feel it because you're already experiencing it. But we have.
You just allow and make space for it to move through you.
Yeah.
I want to take this opportunity to talk more about your mission.
Please.
Because I don't even think I know this mission. Are you able to speak to it? And
let's try.
What's your vision of moving into what's alive for you now, and bringing in sound and vibration? And I know we'll do a part 2 in future, and we'll talk about music and sound in the gong baths, but touch on that for people.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that back. I think that's important because I'm not here to share only about my difficult parts. I think I'm sharing my difficult parts so that you understand where I came from. But that's not me, but it is me. Which is where I am right now. So ask me this question again, and I'm going to answer you hopefully in a very articulate, clearly eloquent way. I try my best.
That's ironic that you got that messed up.
Yeah, I got that messed up. Let me try it again. In an eloquent way.
Yeah.
I'll try at least.
So, I'd like to get to know your vision and your mission, because you've spoken a few times. I mean, we've only met about 4 times.
Enough. More than enough.
So drawn to you. Your mission in life that you spoke about, your grandiose mission, you called it. What can you speak to that?
Okay. I always had this little whisper from a young child. And I cannot explain this, but I've always had the whisper, you are here for something. You're here for something big. And sometimes you can think you're a little bit weird, or you're being a bit crazy, or like, what is that nonsense, when you're brought up in an environment not to nurture that. And also when you have everyone that's so different from you, then you're like, you don't really fully embrace this little whisper. But I kept listening to this whisper, and this whisper would not let me settle. This is why I'm always doing the deep work, because I can feel that I'm here for something. And maybe it's not for everybody, but I know it's very true for me. And with that, the calling is always to guide other people to go deeper and to create impact in other people's life, so that we can connect to our heart and we can communicate with our heart when it's not wounded and it's just love and not so much with the mind. And that modality, or how it manifests, was always different. And after finance, I was also a coach. And I thought that was definitely going to be the way that I was guiding people, and through public speaking. But there's so much you can do in this kind of environment. You know, it's not very lasting to a degree, and you can't force someone to talk through something if they don't want to. But over a period of time, through my journey, and through a couple of ceremonies, the gong found me, and it took me by surprise. And it's literally changed the course of my life when it found me, and it literally go, you are meant to play the gong. At least that's how I heard it. Or maybe that's how I wanted to hear it, you know? And now, being a gong practitioner, I'm utilizing sound, vibration, space holding, and my background of going really deep. I'm excellent at going super, super deep. I have this very strong calling to continuously create powerful, safe, clear, deep holding space to take people into deep spaces of where it calls them through sound and vibration, through the gongs, ultimately. And my grandiose mission, they're not just one, they're a few, and they're all connected. And they split into two, but ultimately it's just one. And it sounds very grandiose, but actually it's not. To me. To other people, it may be. And that is to increase the vibrational frequency of humanity. And that can be with one person, and 2 person, 3 person, and 4 person, 5 and 6 and 7, and then 100 and 200 and 500. And the grandiose plan is to have regular, and this may not be so grandiose now, and it will keep getting bigger. But for now, where I am at, I want to have regular, big gong spaces where I'm holding between 200 to 500 people. And we all come with one intention. With other modalities, we have everybody's thoughts and their minds and their emotion focusing on this intention for that evening. And then playing the gong and guiding them to go deep and increase the vibrational frequency. And within that space, you're going to have other people, energy frequency, helping other people to uplift, because that's how it works. I don't know if, at least this in my mind, I think that's how it works.
Could you talk a bit more about the increase of vibration?
No frequency.
Yeah. What does that mean for?
Yeah.
Say it in a few different ways.
Yeah. I'm going to try to explain, but there's this thing that they say. That if you have, if I'm not mistaken, it's 1%, but it may be less or a little bit more. 1% of humanity did the inner work, and they internally freed themselves from their wounds, and they awakened. And their vibrational frequency is at a quote unquote, we're just using specific words. You can replace it with any words. In a positive, in a high aura. If 1% of humanity did that, it automatically unlocks the 99% of humanity.
According to my Instagram account, there's at least 60% of people doing I'm joking.
Yeah. We need to work on that. What does that mean?
Okay, yeah. So 1% of people.
Yeah.
That's all it would take.
Yeah, but of course to its true definition of what it means of doing inner work and doing it properly. Not just
subjective.
Yeah. You got to do the real work. So with that concept, I've gone, okay, so that means obviously we influence each other with our energy fields. Like you meet some people and you're automatically uplift. And then you meet some other people, you're completely depleted by your energy and you cannot explain
Hoovers and radiators to the layman.
See, yeah.
Suckers
completely.
And radiation.
Right? No judgment there, love and compassion. But with that, you kind of understand that we affect each other in this way.
For sure.
Now, using that concept, in my head, I'm like, okay, if I get to bring a lot of people in one room and literally setting a clear intention and how I convey that to this mass of humans that comes into the space, and then do a few of other modalities, maybe it's chanting, a few things, sharing, moving, I haven't really set that yet, but I know there's a few things that I can do. And then from there, basically getting people to go deep through the sound of vibration. And within that space, while everyone's doing their inner work in whatever shape and form, feeling it, releasing it, expressing it, realizing it, it automatically frees you up internally a little bit. Of course, nothing happens immediately, but it's a process. So within the space of having so many people in one room just doing that, can you imagine what that energy frequency is like in that space? So then in my head, I'm like, wow. So then when everybody comes out of this experience, everybody's energetic field is a little bit increased or uplifted. So now within this space, there is going to be an effect of people maybe 1 mile away. They're going to feel this energy frequency. And that would affect the people that's around that space. But then when these people go back home, they also have the feedback with the people that they're surrounded by. So it helps to increase the vibrational frequency in this way. And the idea is to do it as regular as possible, and to bring more people. We don't have this actually, bringing a lot of people with setting an intention, everybody lying down, and then just with this intention, everybody focusing on going deep, and then having, obviously you need specific equipment, sound, and a beautiful space to facilitate this, and I'm manifesting this out, and I'm also manifesting the right people to come and support me through this mission, and funders and everybody who want crowdfund and support me in any kind of way. I'm sure it's going to come, but that's like one of it, and the other one is really to empower women. I'm doing it right now with my full moon women's gong bath ceremonies. I call that full moon women's gong bath ceremonies, but maybe I need to change the name, because I actually take the women into very deep spaces through sharing, intention, sharing, journaling, sharing, movement, chanting, gonging. And through that sequence, we go into very deep spaces. And I feel like there's a lot of power to work with women, to guide them to really love themselves unconditionally, so that they can shamelessly own their power in a loving way, not in a toxic way. And I think that's where those are the two places that I like to work in. And obviously I'm doing other things, but these are the main things that we have time to speak into, are my grandiose mission, but they just come into one. That's to increase the vibrational frequency of humanity. Yeah, and it's going to take time to create really big events like this.
And you believe in this?
I feel it. It's happening. It's already happened in my head, in my mind.
Facts. That is the most important.
Yeah, it's already happened in my mind. It's coming. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. Beautiful.
When I meet someone like you that I align with, and I feel there's... And then all this is putting it into context, to be honest, because I felt this... I felt like you'd done a lot of work on yourself, and you were able to just... I can't explain it any other way, but you were just so accepting of you and yourself that I felt so present around you, and it was just... I can't really put it into words, that I was just present with you, and I just felt drawn to your energy, because you were grounded and you had this energy around you. You wasn't trying to get or have something other than what was here right now. You know, you weren't trying to like get anywhere. I didn't feel that energy from you, and I've always felt a real trust actually in that I feel people. I feel people's what are their needs met, and what are they trying to like prove or improve, and what's healthy, what's not, and where that kind of comes from, without even having the words to understand or describe it. That I've just felt like a trust that okay, something's not quite right there. That could say something about me or them. Which one is it? I'll find that out. Because sometimes it is me. But with you, there was no question. It was just like, boom, yeah, great. I want to support you. I want to help you. How can I do that? And, you know, bringing you on the podcast is one of my strengths at the moment, to try and support people that I believe in and I want to help grow their mission, share their mission. So it feels really good to be able to, even add anything to that. But ultimately, I believe in that and what you've just said, and it's amazing to be on this journey with you in a way, and help in whatever way I can. It was the same with Shaka. Have you met Saka?
Never, but I've heard about her.
Yeah, she's just someone who has an amazing gift, and I was like, I cannot wait to tell people about her. Even though we didn't connect as much as me and you have, we didn't have that many conversations, but I noticed something in her that was like, wow, like, how can I help?
I want to meet her.
And I get that from you.
Thank you so much for sharing that about me. I receive it. But also it's a feedback loop, my friend. Honestly, I feel the same with you, and it feels I feel at ease when I'm with you. Energetically, it's just like there is clearness in your energy. There is genuineness. I think that's what it is. And a very heart-centered expression, and yeah, I'm drawn to your energy too, and it feels very, very nice to be around you. I love hanging out around you. I love having deep conversations with you. I think we just can't stop.
No stopping us now. The podcast's done, so we can. We were kind of holding stuff back, weren't we?
Yeah, we were.
The podcast
Yeah, so much pressure sometimes, you know.
It's a funny one. I guess I wanted to give it the best. I guess I just really know, because I've done that before, and I guess it comes with experience of like we could have had this conversation prior. It's beautiful when you get people on that it's more true. It's more like we could have gone back into it on the podcast, but this was the first time we've shared those things with each other. Well, you mainly, but first time that you've shared that with me. So it was just, that was me receiving it in that way.
Yeah, I think maybe next time any sharing would just go on the podcast. It's like, stop, set up the camera, let's chat.
Well, it makes it the most powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Rather than repeating it,
for sure,
then it doesn't feel. The energy's different, the sharing's different.
Yeah.
And then the value that people receive is also different.
Yeah, and that's just the dedication I have perhaps to this platform, and really wanting to honour it on my part and other people's perhaps, but it doesn't have to be that way. I surrender to many that haven't been that way, but this felt right to dedicate that to this.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate to.
No, thank you mainly for coming and sharing your journey. It's like powerful.
Yeah, more to come, I think. More to come.
Absolutely.
Maybe next time I would love to hear more about you on the podcast. Maybe.
Oh no, from book. Felt for a few things. You've maybe focused a few things that probably I shouldn't share or won't share in the future. It's good. It's constantly relating, Anything else you want to speak to? Where can people find you and contribute to the mission?
Yes. a lot being shared. So I'm like, okay, now I'm just like settling a little bit.
Yeah. Any ways you want to close this as well? Is welcome.
Any way I want to close it. Nothing comes to mind. Apart from thank you again for bringing me on. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot that you're utilizing your platform so that people can see me, and share a little bit of who I am, so that they get a little bit of flavor of my expression, in order for them to come to my space to receive a gong bath. Because they're very interconnected, I'm not just playing the gong.
I'd never resonated with the gong bath before, but then when I met you, I understood why, because I hadn't connected with the person playing, and that was really pivotal to me. You might not connect with an instrument until someone you connect with plays it,
Yeah. It is a intuitive instrument, at least for me. You play your internal self to it, and it plays you, and then with that frequency that it emits, people feel that vibration and they hear it. That guides them deeper. So with that, for everyone that's out there, please come and find me on Instagram. That is Sunita Movement. I'm pretty sure he's going to put it somewhere down here. Is it up there? Somewhere down there in the caption. And come to my gong baths. They're on my bio. If you never tried a gong bath, just give it a try. I'm not in an egoistic way. I'm pretty sure you're going to experience something, and by you following me on Instagram is a way to support me. And if you resonate to anything that I do, please do share it around. But more than anything else, just come into my space as a first step. That's supporting me. Really
beautiful.
Is there anything else I need to say to that?
What are you most excited about right now?
Now in my life, or now in the next hour?
In your life.
Oh my god, I am so excited. I'm so excited for this expansion. I can feel an expansion in the happening within my creation, and getting closer to my mission, to spreading the vibration to people. Is what I'm very, very excited, and me stepping deeper and deeper into this leadership role as I expand.
Could we just touch upon what happened in your last gong bath?
Yes.
Just before you were about to open. We've done all this prep. You've done weeks. You're week building up to this. I've never, having small comms with you around what you're going through, how you're preparing physically, mentally to this experience, getting yourself in true. I'm going to copy your hand signaling. You always do this. Getting yourself into this prep mode and building up, and your organization and your delegation and your marketing and your online presence, and all building up to this one moment, and you're sat in front of me and you're like, why do I do this?
Yeah. And then when you just go, it really just explains how I was feeling. I forgot to breathe, A lot of people don't see what happens behind the scenes. I don't just stand up, come to a venue, and everything's set up, and I'm just playing the gong.
They might never see that.
They will never see it. But there's just so much work behind the scene, especially the event that you were there. That was a big venue, and that's a lot of planning, a lot of organization, and also selling ticket. Part of the not very fancy part of this is actually selling tickets, and that can be very, very stressful. And then also communicating with the crews to make sure that they know what they need to do, and then to make sure the place is set up properly, to make sure the sound is done and plugged in and it sounds perfect. Then making sure the ditch guy, Mpilo, beautiful human being, we are linking up and we know what we're doing ultimately while I'm playing the gong. And then the lighting, and then to make sure there's enough lighting for the videographer and the photographer, and then to make sure the owner is also happy. There's just a lot. But also prior to that, like, selling tickets and promoting yourself is not just selling. There's like so many avenues: reaching out to friends, reaching out to people that you don't know, doing flyers. I do flyers. Just it's constant.
Briefing, checking in with everyone.
Yeah. So it's I just don't rest, and then on the day I have to like pack my car with a lot of things for a very big venue, and then unload it, and then convey all this information to my beautiful crew, which so happens to be my friends who believe in what I do and supports me. But also making sure that they are doing what they need to be doing at specific time, because we have only a very short time frame before the venue starts, before the event starts. So it's just like go, and everyone needs a little bit of me, but I'm also making sure that everything is done properly, because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to how my space look. How does it smell? How does it look? In every way. And I'm really happy with that, and I'm okay with that, because I know it's not just the gong, it's everything. And that's how I want to convey my space when people walk in. It's a feeling that they feel. But I also know how much work that requires for me and how much pressure it feels. So when you sat there and I just went, oh my God, I'm feeling the pressure. Because now it's not, so now everything is done. Now I have to sit in front of 56, 58 people and hold space. When you are just constantly on the go, and now you gotta go, whoop, okay, stay grounded, stay focused, and then communicate calmly. That's a skill. And authentically as well, that's a lot. And then to go to the gong and then play the gong, but orchestrate it with everybody to make sure the lights are fine, the sound there's just a lot going on. So it forces me to expand, not into one human, but into multitudes of human with different skills and different capabilities of doing different things. So then I sat there and I was like, I felt emotional. It's a mixture of things. It's emotion of like, wow, I'm here holding this very big event and it's full house. I'm so humbled by it. And then also like, I know what it takes to do this. This is not just something so fancy, you standing in front of 56 people and it looks amazing. It takes a lot from me because I give a lot. And sometimes I'm like, why did I choose this path? Because it's hard work and it's sacrifice and it's emotional and it's very exposing and it's very vulnerable, because when you fail in front of a lot of people. This is not working in front of a laptop. So you have nowhere to hide when you're like unsteady. That's what showed up for me. But I
think the other element is that no one will see all of that. That's quite a big, because you're doing all this work and consciously most people will just rock up and think you're just playing a gong. That's a story there. And it's so not true.
No.
And you have to hold that and accept that's okay. But do all this other stuff because, it's not going to happen without it, and you're never going to get any recognition for it.
And
I know it's not about that, but it's an element.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
an
yeah.
element.
It's an element, and actually, in some ways, not in some ways, and in all ways, I'm fine with that. I'm
Yeah.
really happy with that because I'm so passionate.
Well, that is that's the spirituality of it all, right? Doing things when no one's watching.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's where the work is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really happy to do all the unglamorous parts of showing up and holding space to taking people deep through the gong or space holding, because I'm incredibly passionate about it. I love this. I am, like I just posted on my Instagram yesterday, I am obsessed in the best possible way. And I don't mind going out of my way, even though it's hard and it's difficult and it's pressurizing. I don't mind going out of my way to make sure that I create a beautiful space to my best capability with the resources I have. And it's okay that it's not recognized in the background, but when people are in the space, people recognize it and they feel it and they go into a deep space, and for me that's success. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ending it here, huh?
Yeah.